Every morning you are given a fresh beginning, whether you recognize it or not. The moment your eyes open, your mind is once again placed in your hands. Before the world speaks to you, before fear reminds you of yesterday, before doubt lists the reasons you might fail, there is a brief, powerful silence. In that silence, your future is waiting for instructions. The first words you speak each morning quietly shape the direction of your entire day, long before events begin to unfold. When the mind awakens from sleep, it is most open, most impressionable, and most willing to accept suggestion. In those early moments, before habits take control and before the noise of the world enters, the mind waits for guidance. Whatever you say to yourself at that time is not just a thought, it is an instruction. The mind does not judge whether those instructions are good or bad, true or false, possible or impossible. It simply accepts them and begins organizing your behavior, your emotions, and your focus around them. If your first words are filled with doubt, complaint, or fear, the mind immediately prepares for struggle. It searches for proof that those words are accurate. It highlights obstacles, magnifies problems, and weakens initiative. Without realizing it, you move through the day looking for confirmation of the negative program you installed at sunrise. The body follows the mind, energy drops, hesitation grows, and opportunities pass unnoticed. This process feels natural, almost automatic, because it is happening beneath conscious awareness. When the first words of the morning are deliberate and empowering, the effect is just as automatic, but in the opposite direction. Words of confidence awaken alertness. Words of purpose create direction. Words of belief strengthen resolve. The mind begins scanning the environment for chances instead of threats. Decisions become easier because the inner voice has already chosen a direction. Action feels more natural because the mind has been instructed to move forward rather than retreat. Many people believe their circumstances control their thoughts, but the truth is far more powerful. Thoughts spoken consistently shape perception, and perception shapes experience. The first words of the day set the tone for how challenges are interpreted. A difficulty becomes either a signal to stop or an invitation to grow, depending on the mental command given in the morning. The difference is not talent, luck, or intelligence, but programming. The subconscious mind responds especially strongly to repetition combined with emotion. Morning words repeated daily gain authority. Over time, they form beliefs, and beliefs quietly dictate behavior. This is why casual self-talk is never casual. Every phrase spoken inwardly carries weight. When you say this will be a hard day, the mind begins collecting evidence to support that statement. When you say I am prepared to handle whatever comes, the mind organizes resources, patience, and creativity around that belief. Discipline in speech is the foundation of discipline in action. You cannot consistently act in a way that contradicts your dominant self-talk. The first words of the day are like setting the compass before a journey. Once direction is chosen, even small steps begin to align toward a destination. Without direction, effort is scattered and progress feels exhausting. Confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you declare before proof appears. Morning words act as advance instructions to the mind, telling it what kind of person you intend to be that day. Over time, the mind adjusts identity to match those instructions. You begin to act like the person you repeatedly describe yourself as being. This transformation is subtle but relentless, happening day after day through simple spoken thoughts. The world reacts differently to a person whose inner language is strong. Posture changes, tone changes, decisions carry more certainty. Others sense this shift without understanding its source. What appears as charisma or leadership often begins with private morning conversations that no one else hears, conversations that decide whether the day will be led by intention or by habit, by purpose or by reaction, by choice or by default. The subconscious mind is always listening, even when you believe you are not speaking to it directly. It does not sleep when you sleep, and it does not rest when you are distracted. It records impressions, absorbs patterns, and stores repeated thoughts without debate. Whatever ideas are presented to it consistently are treated not as suggestions, but as instructions. It does not analyze logic or measure truth. It responds only to frequency and intensity, accepting repetition as authority. Every thought you repeat strengthens a mental pathway. The subconscious mind works through habit, and habit is formed by repetition. A single thought has little power, but a thought repeated daily becomes familiar, and familiarity is interpreted as truth. This is how beliefs are formed, not through sudden realization, but through quiet accumulation. Over time, the subconscious mind begins to act on these beliefs automatically, guiding behavior, emotional reactions, and even physical responses. When a thought is repeated often enough, the subconscious mind takes responsibility for carrying it out. It influences choices without asking permission. It adjusts perception so that reality appears to confirm the command it has accepted. If the dominant thought is limitation, the mind will unconsciously avoid risk, resist change, and focus on reasons to remain where it is. If the dominant thought is growth, the mind will search for learning, resilience, and opportunity. The subconscious does not distinguish between constructive and destructive commands. It responds with equal loyalty to both. This is why careless inner dialogue can quietly sabotage effort. Repeated complaints, repeated fears, and repeated self-criticism are treated as orders. The mind begins to produce emotions that match them, and actions soon follow. Fatigue, hesitation, and frustration often originate not from circumstances, but from instructions given repeatedly and without awareness. Emotion strengthens the power of repetition. Thoughts spoken with feeling penetrate deeper and settle faster. When repetition is combined with conviction, the subconscious mind moves quickly to align behavior with the accepted idea. This is why words spoken in moments of intensity tend to shape long-term patterns. The mind remembers what is emphasized emotionally and gives it priority. Once a command is accepted, the subconscious mind begins working continuously to fulfill it. It connects ideas, recalls relevant memories, and nudges behavior in subtle ways. It influences timing, attention, and response. Much of what is called instinct is simply the subconscious acting on instructions it has received over time. The individual often feels guided without knowing why. Unaware that guidance was programmed through repeated thought, change does not require force, but consistency. The subconscious mind cannot be persuaded by argument, but it can be trained through repetition. New commands must be given frequently enough to replace old ones. At first, resistance may appear because the old pattern is familiar, but familiarity weakens when repetition stops. Gradually, the new instruction becomes dominant, and behavior begins to shift naturally. This process explains why sudden motivation fades when it is not reinforced. A single burst of positive thinking cannot overcome years of repeated doubt. The subconscious mind follows what it has heard the most, not what it heard once. Discipline in thought is therefore essential. The ideas you choose to repeat become the rules by which your inner system operates. Every repeated thought is a vote for the person you are becoming. The subconscious mind counts these votes and acts on the majority decision. Over time, identity forms around the commands it has accepted. Actions begin to feel automatic, not forced, because they are aligned with internal programming. What once required effort becomes natural when the subconscious mind has been properly instructed. Mastery of life begins with mastery of inner repetition. When thoughts are chosen deliberately and repeated consistently, the subconscious mind becomes an ally rather than an obstacle. It works silently, persistently, and faithfully, carrying out the instructions it has been given, shaping behavior from within, influencing outcomes long before conscious effort takes control. The thoughts you hold at the beginning of the day act as a silent blueprint for everything that follows. Before action takes shape and before decisions are made, the mind has already selected a direction. Morning thoughts quietly determine what you notice, what you ignore, and how you interpret events. The EY decide whether your energy moves toward progress or resistance, clarity or confusion. Long before results appear, the inner atmosphere of the day has already been set. Focus is not created by effort alone, but by intention. When the day begins with scattered or negative thinking, attention becomes divided. The mind jumps from concern to concern, wasting energy on imagined problems. This creates mental fatigue even before meaningful work begins. When the day begins with clear, purposeful thoughts, focus naturally sharpens. The mind organizes priorities and filters distractions without strain, allowing energy to be directed toward what truly matters. Energy follows thought. A mind that starts the morning burdened by worry signals the body to conserve and protect. Muscles tighten, breathing becomes shallow, and motivation weakens. A mind that starts with confidence and expectancy sends a different message. The body responds with alertness, movement feels lighter, and action feels possible. This shift is not imaginary. It is the result of internal signals sent by dominant morning thoughts. Direction is shaped by interpretation. The same situation can push one person forward and hold another back, depending on the meaning assigned to it early in the day. Morning thoughts act as a lens through which experiences are viewed. When the lens is shaped by purpose, challenges are seen as temporary and useful. When the lens is shaped by doubt, even small obstacles appear overwhelming. This E-mind responds not to events themselves, but to the meaning given to them. Many people attempt to change their lives by changing their actions without first changing their morning mindset. This creates resistance. Action taken without mental alignment feels heavy and unsustainable. When the mindset is adjusted first, action becomes a natural extension of thought. Decisions are made faster because internal conflict is reduced. The mind has already agreed on a direction, making follow-through easier. Morning thoughts also influence emotional stability. A day that begins with unresolved fear or resentment carries emotional tension into every interaction. This tension drains energy and clouds judgment. When the day begins with deliberate calm and intention, emotions remain steadier. Reactions are measured rather than impulsive. The individual remains in control rather than being controlled by circumstance. Consistency in morning thinking builds momentum. One purposeful morning influences the next, creating a pattern. Over time, this pattern becomes a habit, and habits shape identity. The mind begins to expect progress, and expectation fuels persistence. Even setbacks lose their power because the dominant direction remains unchanged. Momentum is not the result of constant success, but of consistent alignment between thought and action. The quality of attention throughout the day can often be traced back to the first mental conversation of the morning. When attention is scattered, productivity suffers. When attention is focused, time seems to expand. The difference lies not in the length of the day, but in the clarity of the starting point. Morning thoughts determine whether the day is reactive or intentional. A person who controls morning thoughts controls the pace and purpose of the day. Instead of being pulled by urgency, they move according to priority. Instead of reacting to noise, they respond to meaning. This quiet control does not come from force, but from preparation. The mind that is directed early remains steady later, even when pressure appears. Over time, the accumulation of directed mornings reshapes life itself. Progress becomes predictable because the same mental foundation is laid each day. Results begin to reflect inner order. What once felt chaotic becomes manageable. What once felt draining becomes energizing. The direction chosen at sunrise quietly governs every step taken until nightfall. Confidence and discipline are not gifts reserved for a few, nor are they qualities that appear suddenly when conditions are perfect. They are built gradually through the words a person repeats to themselves each day. Self-talk is the most constant influence in life, yet it is often the least examined. Every instruction given inwardly becomes a suggestion to the mind about what is possible, what is allowed, and what should be avoided. Over time, these suggestions shape behavior more powerfully than external advice or motivation. The mind seeks consistency between what it hears repeatedly and how it acts. When inner language is weak, uncertain, or apologetic, behavior follows the same pattern. Hesitation feels natural because it matches the internal dialogue. When inner language is firm and intentional, behavior begins to reflect strength. Decisions carry more certainty, and action feels justified rather than forced. This transformation begins not with external change, but with deliberate control of self-directed speech. Discipline begins as a mental agreement before it becomes visible action. A person cannot consistently practice habits that contradict their internal identity. If the inner voice describes effort as painful or sacrifice as loss, discipline feels like punishment. If the inner voice frames effort as growth and consistency as strength, discipline becomes a source of pride. The mind accepts whichever description is repeated and organizes behavior accordingly. Confidence is often misunderstood as a reaction to success, but it is actually a cause of it. Confidence grows when the mind hears statements of capability often enough to accept them as normal. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity reduces fear. Even when results are not immediate, confident self-talk keeps the mind engaged rather than withdrawn. It allows a person to stay in the process long enough for skill and experience to develop. Self-talk shapes emotional response. In moments of difficulty, the words spoken inwardly determine whether the mind contracts or expands. A critical inner voice amplifies mistakes and weakens resolve. A constructive inner voice acknowledges challenge without surrendering direction. This difference determines whether setbacks become lessons or limits. Emotional resilience is built through repeated reminders of capability, not through denial of difficulty. The mind obeys the most dominant voice it hears. If that voice comes from external sources, behavior becomes dependent on approval and circumstance. When the dominant voice is internal and intentional, behavior becomes self-directed. Discipline strengthens when guidance comes from within rather than from pressure. Confidence stabilizes when it is reinforced privately rather than borrowed from praise. Consistency in self-talk is more important than intensity. Occasional positive statements cannot overpower daily doubt. The mind measures truth by frequency. Words repeated calmly and regularly carry more influence than words spoken with brief enthusiasm. Over time, these repeated phrases become automatic responses. The inner voice begins to guide behavior without conscious effort. This process explains why identity changes before results change. When a person consistently speaks to themselves as disciplined, they begin to act in disciplined ways. When they speak to themselves as capable, they begin to take on challenges that once felt threatening. The behavior appears natural because it aligns with the internal description. What once required willpower now feels like consistency. Self-talk also influences how others respond. Confidence expressed internally alters posture, tone, and presence. Discipline expressed internally alters reliability and follow-through. People respond to these signals instinctively. Opportunities often appear to increase not because of luck, but because behavior communicates readiness. The practice of intentional self-talk is a form of daily training. Each repeated phrase strengthens a mental muscle. Over time, these muscles support effort during pressure and maintain direction during uncertainty. Confidence stops being something to summon and becomes something that operates quietly in the background. Discipline stops feeling restrictive and begins to feel like structure. The words you repeat to yourself do not merely describe who you are, they instruct the mind on who you are becoming. With repetition, the mind accepts these instructions and reshapes behavior to match them, allowing confidence and discipline to grow steadily from the inside out. A purposeful morning mindset quietly sets powerful forces into motion long before results become visible. When the mind begins the day with clear intention, it naturally aligns attention, behavior, and awareness toward progress. Opportunity is rarely created by chance alone. It is recognized by a mind prepared to see it. Without preparation, possibilities pass unnoticed, disguised as ordinary moments. With preparation, even simple situatio NS reveal pathways forward. The mind is constantly filtering information. From countless sights, sounds, and interactions, it selects only what matches its dominant focus. A mind directed by purpose filters for usefulness rather than distraction. It notices patterns, connections, and openings that others overlook. This selective attention is often mistaken for luck, but it is the natural result of mental direction. When the mind knows what it is seeking, it becomes alert to signals pointing toward it. Decisive action is not a personality trait, but a mental condition. When intention is established early, hesitation decreases. The mind wastes less time debating because direction has already been chosen. Purpose reduces internal conflict. With fewer opposing thoughts, energy flows into movement rather than analysis. Action becomes faster, cleaner, and more confident because it is supported by clarity. Many opportunities appear briefly and require response before doubt has time to grow. A mind trained to act with purpose recognizes these moments and responds while others delay. This does not mean reckless behavior, but readiness. Purpose creates readiness by narrowing options and strengthening priorities. When priorities are clear, decisions require less effort. Fear often disguises itself as caution. Without a purposeful mindset, the mind exaggerates risk and minimizes potential. With purpose, risk is evaluated but not feared. The mind remains focused on progress rather than protection. This shift allows action even in uncertainty. Growth rarely waits for complete certainty, and a purposeful mind understands this intuitively. Opportunity is also attracted through behavior. A person who acts decisively sends clear signals to others. Reliability, confidence, and consistency invite collaboration and trust. These qualities often open doors that technical skill alone cannot. Purpose expressed through action communicates seriousness, and seriousness draws opportunity. The morning mindset influences persistence throughout the day. When action is connected to purpose, effort feels meaningful rather than draining. Setbacks do not cause withdrawal because the larger direction remains intact. The mind interprets obstacles as part of the path rather than reasons to stop. This interpretation sustains action even when immediate results are absent. Momentum builds when purposeful actions are repeated. One decisive choice makes the next easier. Over time, action becomes habitual. The individual begins to move naturally toward opportunity, not because of constant motivation, but because direction has been internalized. This momentum often appears impressive to others, yet it is simply the result of daily alignment. A purposeful mindset also sharpens intuition. The mind becomes sensitive to subtle cues because it is not overwhelmed by noise. Intuition is not mysterious, it is the subconscious connecting information quickly. When the conscious mind is clear, these signals rise to awareness. Decisions feel right because they are supported by both logic and alignment. Those who cultivate purposeful mornings tend to experience more meaningful coincidences. They meet the right people at the right time, hear the right idea when they need it, and find solutions when problems arise. These experiences are not random. They occur because attention, intention, and action are working together. The difference between waiting and moving is often decided before the day truly begins. A mind that wakes with purpose leans toward action. A mind that wakes without direction drifts. Over time, this difference compounds. Small daily decisions accumulate into significant outcomes. By claiming the morning with intention, the mind becomes an active partner in progress rather than a passive observer. Opportunity becomes visible, action becomes natural, and forward movement becomes the default response to life's demands.